Good evening. Just 5 days left for the all-important railway budget to be presented in Parliament, and even if some analysts believe that it's going to be sort of a more of the same kind of a budget, there are few things that demand our attention and indeed a lively debate tonight. It's not like the ministry isn't planning some new schemes. Pawan Kumar Bansal is an experienced campaigner, and some of the notables that we are likely to see in this railway budget are as follows. The railways are planning to introduce about 100 new trains, including AC double-deckers, new passenger services, and extension of services to cater to the demands of various states in the Rail Budget 2013-14. As far as the rolling stock program is concerned, an announcement is expected to be made for manufacturing of about 4,200 new coaches, including 600 LHB coaches in the rail budget. While provision for manufacturing of 670 new locomotives, including 20 LNG locomotives, will be made, the budget will also account for manufacturing of about 16,000 new wagons. There is also talk of a marginal hike in passenger fares. Despite the freight hike in March 2012, the Railways is set to miss its freight earning target of Rs 89,339 crore this fiscal year, as the total goods earning for the last 10 months from April to January is just about 70,000 crore rupees. Railway's annual plan size was slashed down to 52,000 crore from 60,000 crore for the year 2012-13 due to the overall cut in the expenditure. There are also concerns about the operation ratio of the railways. For your benefit, operating ratio is defined as the company's expenses as percentage of revenue in the last rail budget. Railway had predicted its operating ratio to be 84.9%, whereas at present, its operating ratio is hovering around an unhealthy 90%. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight on The Big Picture, we give you a curtain raiser on what to expect in the upcoming rail budget. We will talk about the fiscal and general health of the nerve that connects the entire country and what the outlook for the future will be. And joining me on the show tonight will be Bhakta Charan Das, Lok Sabha MP from the Congress, also M.Y. Siddiqui, former Chief Spokesperson, Ministry of Railways, Mr. V.K. Agnihotri, former member, Railway Board, and Soma Banerjee, National Policy Editor of the Economic Times. Also joining us on the program will be Mr. Prakash, Javadekar, Spokesperson of the BJP. Many thanks to all of you for joining us on The Big Picture tonight. I'll start with the opposition leader on the panel, Mr. Javadekar. What do you really expect from this year's railway budget? We all know the railway fiscal health is not that great right now. A passenger hike, a marginal passenger hike is what people expect. What do you really expect from the railway budget this year?
First time the ministry has come to the Congress after so many years in their coalition. So everybody will like to see what he is up his sleeves and what he is really offering. What people want, that is definite. They want security, safety and conveniences. Suraksha bhi chahiye, suvidhaएं bhi chahiye.
Right.
And the main challenge is, there are three main challenges as I see it. You have to augment the capacity of everything what railway needs, right from tracks to engines to and maintenance and everything. So that is first. You have declared projects like bio-toilet and everything. You have to really implement it. People need to see that things can happen in India. Then you have to stop the rackets working in the railway reservation system, because that is the worst headache.
Right.
You just don't know in the very first day, 60 days or 90 days before, you book and you get waiting list ticket, and you can get confirmation only at the last day or 90 minutes before. This is absolutely unacceptable.
Right, sir.
And yeah, that is why he has to change the system, the mindset, the infrastructure and safety and security.
Right. Let's get a response from the Congress MP on the panel as well before I come to my studio guests. Mr. Bhakta Charan Das, you're from the Congress. You heard what the BJP spokesperson had to say right now. They want the railway minister, the current railway minister, to change the system. Is it going to be very difficult for him, considering he just got the job a couple of months back, some months back? And do you really think that you can match up, the party and the minister can match up to what the opposition and the people really need?
Certainly, our minister, Mr. Bansal, is a highly experienced person, and he would come up to the expectation in the budget, because now we are to strengthen the augmentation in all the field. Rightly, Mr. Javadekar said that the existing network has to be strengthened. to deliver the best service to the people. And for last so many years, in the railway fare has not increased.
Right.
So there might be slightly increase in the fare for the interest with the growth of the economy. The increase has not happened in past, and that has to happen.
Right.
But at the same time, the services has to be given. And I don't know whether the importance of the backward region has been taken into consideration by the Planning Commission or not.
Right. You're saying basically your minister is up to the task and he will give a budget that the people and the opposition will like. I want to come to my studio guest right now. We have the former chief spokesperson of the Ministry of Railways, Mr. M.Y. Siddiqui. Sir, input costs are rising. The railways aren't in the shape that they used to be once upon a time. At one point in time, they had over 70,000 plus surplus as well. That has all changed. What is the biggest problem facing the Ministry of Railways as of now, in your opinion?
That is because of this railway is always torn between the social responsibility on the one hand and on the other, this as a business entity, that is financial viability. And every year as a populist measures, the government and successive railway ministers or the government for that matter have been announcing large number of freebies, including new lines, new railway, new trains, etc., passenger amenities and all that. And there is a throw forward of projects
Right.
of the order of 160,000 crores.
Right.
And they are kept mostly alive with a token sum of allocation of rupees 1 lakh to 10 lakh per year. And priorities are shifting with the ever-changing stewardship of the ministry or the government. So because of that, and there is another problem that the railway is facing is cross-subsidization
Right.
of passenger services from the earnings of freight traffic.
Right.
So how far the minister will be able to balance
We'll
it?
have to wait and watch, obviously. Before I
Yes.
come to Soma Banerjee, and I
Yes,
want to come
yes.
to her as soon as possible, I'll go to you, Mr. Agnihotri. Of course, you have so much of experience working for the railways. Do you agree with Mr. Siddiqui? Do you think that populism somehow takes a toll on the railway budget every year?
Yeah, it has been happening in the past, but slowly I think it has to change, and some steps have been taken by government that populist requirement of railways are not burdened on the railway ministry. They are being taken care of to some extent by Government of India as national projects. And national projects are needed, whether it is Kashmir or whether it is Northeast, wherever actually the job has to be done because people have to be served. It is not within the competence of Indian Railways to provide funds for that. And Indian Railways funds actually are in really bad shape, as you said in the very beginning. And we have to source funds from 3 sources. One is internal generation, and that can only happen if proper fares and freights are there. Second is from the government budgetary support. There again, there are conflicting demands, and actually railways can get as much Government of India can give. Third source, which is a very actually important source, is the PPP source. In that, railways have not succeeded in the past because they have not been able to frame rules and procedures by which a private investor will come and put his money.
Right.
Because in railways, they don't give authority to the private investor to actually run and manage the railways.
Right. Point taken. So I want to come to Soma Banerjee now. Soma Banerjee, you heard all all of our guests had to say. Everyone has a viewpoint. Everyone has a theory about why the railway isn't really doing that well fiscally. What is the railway's biggest problem?
I think politics. And I think Mr. Javadekar, I take him at what he said, that it's the first time in 16 years, I think, when the Congress has really got his own man in the portfolio. And they would want to make some sort of a difference in the way the budget is presented. I think the early indications have already suggested that. We've seen a price tariff freight hike, and a fare hike rather, in the last decade. So 10 years since there's been no passenger price hike. You have at the same time the fact that low-cost airlines have come in and they have given the railways a run for the money. The second is you've seen the freight going down, proportion of freight in railways going down. That means roads are giving you a better run for the money. And I think going by the fact that actually if you look at last year's budget, the budget which was presented by Mr. Dinesh Trivedi, which unfortunately again fell prey to politics, did have a few measures of tariff rationalization, modernization, independent regulatory authority, PPPs, all of which has been mentioned. And I do expect that to come back this year. We do expect it to be a more rational and a less populist budget, despite the fact that it is an election year. So you may have the regular announcement of trains, the regular announcement of factories in various constituencies, but I think the fact of economics getting in should see some dose.
Before I go to Mr. Javadekar, I want to put a quick supplementary to you, Soma. Very briefly, if I could, before I go to Mr. Javadekar, there is expectation of a marginal hike in passenger fares. That's a very good idea right now.
I think so. I think there is scope for a hike needed. I know the usual political bogey of inflation, of price rise, and I'm sure it is politically very right to make all these noises. But it's also true that the cost of running and the cost of operations and cost of even procuring stuff has gone up. And just on economics, I think there is a price to be paid, and people are willing to pay that price if they get good service.
Absolutely.
So the fare hike can go up as long as what Mr. Javadekar said, they address the issue of better services, safety and security.
Absolutely. Mr. Javadekar, you heard what Soma said. This time around, it's slightly different. All political parties are sort of in consensus that we need a marginal passenger fare hike. Your party will support it, yes?
No, it is not about supporting or opposing. You have to see any increase in the context.
Right.
The government in one go from 18th January has imposed 11 rupees hike per litre for railway like bulk consumers. It has burdened railway with 3,000 crore rupees. And now on that pretext you are going to increase again. And when people are already reeling under the inflation, and if you are increasing all fares simultaneously, it makes a worse scenario. That is first part. But more importantly, railways should run railways. If you read Mamta's speeches 3 years ago, they wanted to run hospital, they wanted to run medical colleges, they wanted to run hotels, they wanted to run so many things. We said, run railways. That's your job. See, major freight problem has arisen because new ports are coming up, but rail links is not there.
Right.
So from port to interland, once it is loaded on tank container, then it goes via road. So they must pick up immediately an emergency program of connecting all possible ports so that every port is now full and new ports are coming up. Railways are not commensurate to that.
Right.
Northeast connectivity is also very important. It is actually not happening now. What budgetary support the budget from general budget the railways will receive? You will recall that during Atalji's time there was a major support to carry out safety improvements from the general budget.
Right.
That kind of budget we need. Last 2 points.
Right.
PPP, why it has failed? Because you are not doing it professionally. Railways are not professional. That mindset is important. If you want to even erect a ROB, the corporation and the state government is ready to incur expenditure.
Right, sir.
But they don't allow. That doesn't happen in 3-4 years. So this is absolutely a mindset change which is required. That requires a work culture change.
Right, sir.
And last, then only it will become competitive freight carrier.
Absolutely.
They have to improve upon their efficiency much.
Very quick reaction from Shoma, we'll take a break after
I think,
that.
Mr. Javadekar,
Very
there's
quick
two
reaction.
things. One, I would like to know what's the ratio of diesel-run trains vis-a-vis electricity. The second point, which I think you're missing out maybe, is that there is actually a change. If you go to Rail Bhavan, you probably see railway board members more active than what you saw in the last 16 years.
Mr. Javadekar, I would like you to respond after the
flowing.
break. To this point, I would like you to respond and other members as well. After the break, we have to take a small break right now. We'll be back in no time. Stay tuned. Welcome Welcome back to The Big Picture. We're discussing the upcoming railway budget. Mr. M.Y. Siddiqui is still with us. You heard before the break, our guest has a very important point. Mr. Javadekar spoke about the breakup between diesel as well. Do you have any comments on that as a former chief spokesperson?
Now it is 50-50 ratio between electric traction and diesel traction. The price of input cost of both is increasing, and that is the problem for railways. And so the increase in prices of this tariff, passenger tariff as well as this goods tariff,
Right.
has been wiped out considerably with the increase in input cost of diesel and electricity.
Right.
Because railway is getting at the commercial rate, and there is no subsidy as a public transporter. It is not enjoying any subsidy in this.
Right.
So the railway has to balance it.
Absolutely. Balance is very important. It needs to be
Yes,
struck for
yes.
this to be a very, important, very significant budget. Mr. Agnihotri, we were discussing something before the break. Give us your views.
No, thing is that it was opined that PPP is not working in railways. Actually, there is a PSU of railways known as at the RVNL, and they have been very successful in giving port connectivity, and they should be given more responsibility and more freedom to fix SPVs who would invest money and who would give the new ports and old ports better connectivity. But the best connectivity of the port will be provided by dedicated freight corridor between Delhi and Mumbai, and on which work is on. And when this thing opens, the travel time of a container from Delhi to Mumbai will be 1 day compared to about 4 days. And this itself will give a big boost to our exports and imports.
Right. I want to ask Soma Banerjee what other ways the railways can shore up the finances. But before that, I will go to Mr. Bhakta Charan Das. Mr. Das, you heard the guests. Lots of expectations this time from the railway budget because the fact that the Congress has this ministry for the first time in many, many years. Now, you heard what my guests had to say. Do you think all of those expectations, all of those points that we just enumerated, do you think Mr. Bansal will in fact give us a budget that addresses all those issues? Does he have the wherewithal right now, given the position, given the fact that it's an election year as well next year?
In fact, railway has started functioning as railway with regard to the connectivity of the port, or maybe with regard to completing the ongoing project or manufacturing, developing the manufacturing unit, etc. Railway has taken it very seriously. What is needed is that the railway administrative setup needs to be more commercialized, and it has to be open from the commercial angle so that the PPP mode and other aspect should not remain as conservative character of railway. The railway has to open up so that the expectation of the people can be fulfilled, and the railway can also economically survive. So these challenges is not out there in the economic downturn scenario. There are challenges before railways, but I think the railway would be able to manage this time.
Right. Soma Banerjee first, then Mr. Javadekar. Soma, what are the other ways the railways can really shore up finances? How feasible would be hiking freight charges to, say, a large extent even further again? And what other ways can the railways really shore up their finances? They really need the money. They're bleeding cash.
Yeah, I mean, see, one, you cannot wish away that fares and freights have to be commensurate to the cost. They cannot be subsidizing that. But, you know, it's also a volume game at the end of the day, in the sense that if you don't have enough of the volume kicking in, then you cannot really earn the money. So just increasing fares or increasing freight rates alone will not do much for the finances as far as railways are concerned. But I think they can definitely, as a corporation, if they start functioning commercially well, they can go to the market. People are going to bet on something like the railways. The PPP project, you know, all industries who want their goods to move from ports or from factories to service centers will be willing to put in money because they're stranded with their goods. So I think that's something which, and the other thing which has been talked about a lot but we haven't seen it happening is land which can be sold.
Right.
This is
Very
one of the
important
areas
point,
which even Kelkar had suggested. It's suggested for PSUs, but it's also an important thing for railways. They do have a lot of waste land which they can dispose of and earn some money from it for capital injection,
Right,
which you
right.
really need to have.
We don't have much time, but I would like to go back to the point that you raised before in the break. Go ahead, ask that question again to Mr. Javadekar. I want to hear his response.
Yeah, Mr. Javadekar, I just wanted to know from you, and I'm sure that if we today had the NDA or the BJP in power and a railway minister who was from the BJP, you wouldn't really be shy of saying that, prices have to go up when costs also go up. True, the consumer is burdened, but the consumer is living in a real world. You and I go to the market and buy vegetables today at a higher price.
Right.
So why should we always think as transport or utility prices have to be subsidized? I think there's a point in saying that the government can subsidize diesel for railways and not treat it as a bulk carrier when you're subsidizing SUVs.
Right.
But to say that prices should not go up or the consumers are going to be burdened, I really would want to know.
Go ahead, sir,
Who
with your
said?
response. With your response,
No, nobody has said that prices won't go anytime. But simultaneously, as I said, there is a context of overall inflation and people reeling under it, A. And B, you must show that we are making railways more efficient. Sure. We are providing something more so that people will definitely be ready to pay at that point of time. The issue is, last mile connectivity issues need more efficient railway administration. And with my experience, I can tell you, now the government needs a political will for railway reforms. There are n number of reports, suggestions, and there is unanimity practically. The issue is, you are talking about Delhi, Mumbai freight corridor, where it is, when it will come into. 7 years ago, you inaugurated it at the hands of the Prime Minister, but it has not taken off the way it wanted to be. It is tremendous delays.
Right.
And you sort it out. And there are last mile connectivity, simple thing. In Wadala, just one example, in Wadala in Mumbai, there is everything. It can connect many railways together and bring out basic reform. What is snailing for last five years is that rehabilitation of 800 slums who are on the rail corridor.
Right, Mr. Javadekar.
So these are the issues which needs to be tackled. Then you can give results.
Right, Mr. Javadekar, fair point. We take your point right now. I want to quickly go to my remaining two guests and get their word in right now. What about expansion, Mr. Agnihotri? Expansion and renewal of, say, existing infrastructure. How difficult is that going to be, considering it's an election year, considering Mr. Javadekar says the Congress has the railway ministry after a while now. How difficult is that going to be?
No, the problem of construction is that India does not have required trained manpower in railways, because India has not created any engineering college for railways, which Chinese created in 1980. And now they are producing 2,000 railway engineers every year, and we produce zero. So that is one big stumbling block, whether it is a contractor, whether it is a consultant, or whether it is public sectors. They don't get young trained railway manpower. That is number one.
Right.
Number two is money. Without money, you cannot do anything. So as we discussed in the very beginning, the three sources of money have to be totally optimized, and we have to support by the money input the various projects which we want to take up. Without money, you cannot take up a project.
Absolutely. Mr. Siddiqui, very quickly, if you could, two things you want to see in this year's rail budget that you think should be there.
Well, I foresee this greater emphasis on passenger amenities, which are elusive so far, because there is a lot of malpractices, and money is not properly utilized, and passengers, rail users are not satisfied, and safety will be obviously.
Right, absolutely. Very quickly, Mr. Bhakta Das, you've heard what we've been talking about for the past 25 minutes now. We have very little time right now. Parting words, if any, to our viewers right now. What should the audience and the consumers and the passengers, really, railways is the nerve that connects the country. It's really the vein that connects the whole country, vast country like India. What is the message that is going out right now, considering this is a Congress railway budget?
Listen, it is all the time that the people expect that the safety, security, amenities, these are not to be compromised, and the best possible measures should be taken for this. And the augmentation of the ongoing project. The projects are delayed and cost overrun is highly burden on railway. So therefore, the ongoing projects must be completed at targeted time. And so that the efficiency in transportation of the passenger trains and the goods train would be much more, and as per the requirement of our people, so that the even at the same time also the railway has to, I say that they should open up and present a views of national concept.
Right.
It should be a shift from the regionalism to the nationalism in its presentation of every region of the country.
Right, right. Thank you, Mr. Bhakta Das, for that. For the last word, I'll go to Soma Banerjee again. Soma, not much time as you know, but sum it up for all for us. What is the budget going to be like? What are the two things that you need to see in the budget this year, considering it's a Congress budget, also considering it's an election year next year? What do we want to see in the rail budget this year?
You know, I think I won't be able to say anything which has not already been said, but there are two things which I definitely would want to say. One, I'll take what Mr. Javadekar said. You really need political will now for the reforms, and I hope Mr. Javadekar and his party will also show that political will come in with constructive suggestions instead of just opposing, being an opposition party, because you really need the railways to pick up if you want the economy to go ahead. And second, something which I really hope for, we don't see trains running towards Mr. Bansal's constituency like it has been a trait with every railway minister.
He has already done that.
Okay, with that, Mr. Javadekar will end the program tonight. Many thanks to all my guests. I must thank them one by one. Prakash Javadekar of the BJP, many thanks for joining the big picture as well. Charan from the Congress as well. Mr. M.Y. Siddiqui as well as Mr. V.K. Agnihotri, of course, Soma Banerjee with us as well. Thank you so much all for your views and opinions. Of course, the railway budget will be presented in Parliament on the 26th of this month. We'll have to wait and watch. Well, Mr. Pawan Kumar Bansal, the first Congress railway minister in a while now, comes up with this time around and gets the railways this time around. That's all the time we have tonight on The Big Picture. Athar Khan saying goodbye, good night, and thank you for watching.